News First, just obtaining new documents into the background of a fired Doraville police officer.
Miles Bryant is charged with concealing the death of a teen in Gwinnett County. Atlanta News First Megan Packer is live right now at the Doraville Police Department. And Megan, you've been going through his file, right?
Right, 200 pages of that file, so a lot to go through. Everything from his work history, including the Army National Guard, to how the Doraville Police Department here handled his firing this week and how they addressed a complaint from another woman who came forward about him. This is 22-year-old former officer Miles Bryant in court recently as he faces charges of concealing the death of 16-year-old Susanna Morales, whose remains were found in woods after she was missing for months. Another woman, Alicia Bates, says she had concerns herself about Bryant showing up at her apartment unannounced several times last year. This is video from her neighbor's doorbell camera that she says shows him lingering outside of her door. Her door was even kicked in on one occasion, but she did not know at the time who may have been responsible for that. The personnel file we got today shows when Bates took her concerns to Doraville police, supervisors addressed it with Officer Bryant and told him his contact with Bates had to stop immediately. A captain wrote that Bryant stated he was only checking on her and did not mean her any harm, and he said he would not contact her anymore. A Gwinnett detective is now looking into that case. Now, the file we got today includes a letter from the Doraville police chief explaining the termination of that officer and says while his innocence is presumed, the charges essentially put their department in a bad light because of how serious they are, including possibly affecting public trust, so they took immediate steps. We are live right now at the Doraville Police Department. I'm Megan Packer, Atlanta News First.
Megan, thank you.